The final part of this series of videos looks at the energy states of the orbitals and how they're affected by the presence of more than one electron in multi-electron atoms. We'll then look at how the energies change across the periodic table and how those changes can be used to understand the periodic trends in atom size, electronegativity, and ion size, which are critical in predicting the type of bonding exhibited by a material in the solid state. Most of these trends are actually related to the trends in the effective nuclear charge, and that section will begin with a discussion of that trend.
Now we'll take a look at the energy states of the electronic wave functions, and we'll see how these are affected by the presence of more than one electron, i.e. for multi-electron atoms. For the hydrogenic atom, an atom with one electron, for a given n, all of the orbitals of different L are degenerate, and their energy is given by the Bohr model, formula shown here, minus c squared Ry being the Rydberg constant, over n squared. And so as the value of n increases, the energy also increases. And for a hydrogenic type atom, let's consider for example the so-called M shell with the principal quantum number n equals 3, the 3s, the 3,3p's, and the 5,3d orbitals all have the same energy. However, in multi-electron atoms, this degeneracy is removed, and the energy of the orbitals is a function of n, but also of L. And these shells split into subshell orbitals, as shown here. The lowest L has the lowest energy, and the energy for a given n, as L increases, progressively increases. We see here the 3s is lower than the 3p, and in turn is lower than the 3d. Why is this degeneracy removed? Why is E a function of L? The splitting is associated with electron-electron repulsions, which are very difficult to model in a quantitative sense. What we can do, however, is look at this splitting of the energy levels in terms of orbital penetration and shielding and screening of the electrons in a given orbital. Here's a schematic picture of a multi-electron atom, the nucleus, positive charge Z, and core electrons and valence electrons. Now the core electrons are located closer to the nucleus, and as a result they partially screen the nuclear charge, and the degree of screening we call S. As a result, the valence electrons do not feel the full charge of the nucleus, because part of it has been, if you like, neutralized by those core electrons. The charge, or more specifically the effective charge felt by the valence electrons, is equal to Z minus the degree of shielding, or screening, S. And this effective charge is a function of N and L. Let's take a look at how this effective charge changes for a given n for the different L orbitals. Let us return to our picture of the RDF for the period 3 elements, in other words, for the 3s, 3p, and 3d. We've seen this picture before, where we discussed the number of radial nodes. What I've added here is the RDF, or more specifically the summed RDF, of the core electrons for an element in this third period. So here we see the inner 1s, 2s, and 2p electrons that completely fill those orbitals for this period. They are located, or have a higher probability of being found, close to the nucleus. And as a result, they shield the charge from the valence electrons in the n equal 3 orbitals. However, we know the lower n orbitals have radial nodes. Let's focus on the 3s. Before we have seen that these two radial nodes exist at lower r's, and therefore the electron in the 3s orbital partially penetrates that core. In other words, there is a possibility of the electron being found here and here within those core electrons. As a result, an electron in the 3s orbital could feel more of the nuclear charge than an electron in a higher L orbital, for example, the 3d. So for the 3d shown here, there are no radial nodes in the RDF, and therefore there's a very low percentage probability of the electron spending time when it's in this orbital within the region of the core electrons. The 3p is intermediate between these two. It has one radial node. There's some degree of penetration, and so therefore it feels slightly reduced shielding compared to a 3d, but nonetheless not as great as the 3s. And so therefore, for a given n, the energy of the s orbital is less than the p and less than the d, and if they are allowed, less than the f, due to this partial penetration. And so now my energy of an electron in those orbitals is given by a Bohr-type equation. And so we still have the 1 over n squared dependence. But here, instead of the z squared, we use the effective z squared. And this in turn is a function of both n and L. The effective nuclear charge shows important periodic trends. And so as we just mentioned, the effective nuclear charge, Zf, is equal to Z minus that electron screening, i.e. Z minus S. Across a row, in other words for a given n, Z is increasing. However, those core electrons, or the filling of those core electrons, which are most effective at screening the nuclear charge, is unchanged as we go across that row. For example, again using the third period, sodium, magnesium, etc., we know that the 1s, 2s, and 2p are fully occupied. And therefore, as I go across this row, the number of core electrons remains unchanged. However, the nuclear charge is increasing. Those added valence electrons, they do shield to some degree, but it's quite limited compared to the core electrons. And so therefore, when I go from left to right, there's a large increase in Z effective. As I go down a group, I'm increasing n. And we've seen before that as I increase n, the radial extent of the wave function increases. And so I have a larger core, but less effective shielding. And therefore, Zf increases as I go down a group. However, this is a smaller effect compared to the left to right trend. So now let's focus on the orbital energy and Zf. Because the 1s is of the lowest energy, I can immediately deduce that it has the highest effective nuclear charge. And as I go up in energy, the effective nuclear charge felt by an electron in that particular orbital decreases. However, we've just seen a left to right trend in the effective nuclear charge. So if I go along a given period, Z effective increases. Well, if there's an increase in Zf, that means as I go from left to right, I must be decreasing the energy of the orbitals. And so as Zf increases, I lower the energy of all of the orbitals. Here I'm comparing the energy of the orbitals for an element on the left side in a given row to that on the right side. And all of those orbitals shift to lower energy. All of the atomic orbitals are stabilized as I go from left to right in the periodic table. We'll see that this trend is important for rationalizing the atom size. As we look at periodic trends in the sizes of the atoms, we'll find that we've covered most of the major factors. Atom size is determined by the radial extent, or if you the size of the electron orbitals. And in turn, the Z effective plays a critical role. As we go down a given group, let us look at the variation in the RDF as n increases. Shown here are the RDFs that we've seen before of the 1s, 2s, and 3s. And as we mentioned in previous modules, the radial extent of the orbital increases with increasing n. That results in a periodic increase in the size of an atom as we go down a given group. The left to right trend is intimately related to Z effective. Z effective increases in going from left to right. What that means is that the orbitals are more tightly bound when we have the higher ZF. They're of lower energy. Because they're more tightly bound, they'll be closer to the nucleus, or their radial extent will be lessened. That means their atomic size will decrease periodically as we go from left to right. A very important parameter in chemistry is the electronegativity of an atom, chi. The electronegativity is defined as the ability of an atom in a bond to attract electrons to itself. How effective is it in competing for those bonding electrons? The effectiveness is inversely related to the trend in atom size. For example, let's revisit Z effective. A higher Z effective means that the electrons in those orbitals feel a stronger effective nuclear charge. So an atom with a higher ZF will be more efficient at competing, if you like, for those bonding electrons. So chi increases are going from left to right in the periodic table, just as the Z effective did. And this is a strong effect. And so atoms on the right-hand side are very effective competing for electrons. Fluorine has the highest electronegativity. Also, chi increases going up a row. This is a weaker effect compared to the left to right trend, but hopefully we can also rationalize this. We know going down a row the atom size increases due to that radial extent of the orbitals. And so if the orbitals going down a group are further away from the nucleus that is attracting them, then they won't be as strongly bound. In other words, atoms at the top will have a higher Z effective and therefore a higher electronegativities. The values for electronegativities range from 0.7 to 4. The lowest electronegativity is at the bottom of group 1. Or we can twist those words around and say that's the most electropositive element. The highest electronegativity, in other words, the atom that is most effective in competing or attracting electrons to itself, is fluorine. Atoms with large values of their electronegativity will tend to acquire electrons. Those with low values, which are electropositive, will tend to lose electrons. If I have a compound that is comprised of an atom from the left and the right, I'll find that I get electron transfer to the more electronegative element and formation of an ionic bond. Ion formation is just highlighted here in this schematic periodic table. The electropositive elements on the left readily give up electrons to become positive ions, the charge being determined by the number of electrons given up, which in turn is related to their group number. And on the right we have the electronegative elements. They will readily acquire electrons to become negative ions, the number they acquire again being determined by their group number. The trends in ion size are similar to those of the atoms. When electrons are lost, they form cations, and in that case, the cation will be smaller than the corresponding neutral atom. Because it has become a positive ion, it will also have a higher ZF than the corresponding neutral atom, as it has lost some of the electrons that shield the nuclear charge. Conversely, if an atom forms an anion, through acquiring extra electrons, those anions are larger than the neutral atom. They have a lower ZF, and those extra electrons cause electron-electron repulsions. They provide extra shielding of the nuclear charge and have a lower ZF. So here are the trends in ion size across the periodic table. As I mentioned, the trends are similar to those we have seen in the atoms, the size increasing as we go from right to left, and also increasing as we go down a given group.